Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual summit on Integrated GIS and BIM solutions for sustainable project delivery. Very warm welcome to all the guests and the speakers who have joined us and who are joining in the as we speak. A very warm evening or night or day at from wherever part you are joining us. I'm Titash Roy. I am the Senior Research Manager in GW Consulting, and I mainly look after the AEC and the digital cities. So I will be the host for today, and we will be starting our summit with a short presentation that we have prepared based on the findings of the report, the high-level global report on GIS and BIM integration that we have prepared in collaboration with Autodesk and Esri. Yeah. So, integrated GIS and BIM solutions. In one sentence, why do we need it? Integrated geographic information systems and building information modeling solutions facilitate a data-driven approach to project lifecycle management, which is really crucial and for sustainable project outcomes. Why do we need these AC industry practices to be digitalized? So according to our secondary research that we have done for this project, we found out that 80% of the projects overshoot their primary budget. 52% of the projects suffer from reworks which occur during the course of the project because of poor data as well as communication. 35% of the weekly worker hours are spent mostly on managing reworks and handling conflicts, and most of 20% of the projects are not most completed in time. Looking at the challenges, the needs and the solutions for the different stakeholders. So the different challenges that different stakeholders in terms of AEC executives, AEC project managers, as well as the owners and operators are facing are that one is that there is no accessibility to real-time construction progress data. There is difficulty in locating data from multiple systems and platforms, outdated communications and collaboration techniques, as well as outdated existing processes for file sharing. Integrated GIS and BIM solutions are basically being proven to be proving to be beneficial when it comes to managing these challenges. With the help of integrated GIS and BIM solutions, we can achieve real-time linking of information related to construction progress, integration of project information from multiple data platforms, accessing project information from associated stakeholders, as well as an establishment of data integration capabilities for quick share. Coming to the integrated GIS BIM solutions capabilities and key benefits, in terms of BIM, the capabilities are model-based cost estimation, visualization of projects in pre-construction, improved scheduling and sequencing, as well as changes and clash detection. And when it comes to GIS, site survey and selection, project feasibility analysis, environmental impact assessment, as well as asset inventory management are a few capabilities that are being added because of this integration. Let's look at the key benefits. One is the faster plan approval and permits. There has been improved coordination and collaboration. There is reduced cycle time in terms of multi-party workflows. There is reduced material usage. There has been reduction in total construction cost. And last but not the least, there has been an increase in project resiliency. When we started analyzing the global case studies, we had around a sample size of around 350 case studies of construction projects all over the world. We found that the adoption across the construction life cycle is not exactly the same throughout. It's the plan and the design stage where the integrated GIS and BIM solutions are most adopted, whereas in the build stage, operations and maintenance and project management, the numbers are quite low. These are a few of the basic tasks that we can easily perform using integrated GIS and BIM solutions. So for example, in plan and design, it helps in informed decision making based on accurate geo-referenced information. When it comes to design to execution phases, it simulates different scenarios based on project management inputs. It helps communicate project scheduling at varying levels of project execution. When it comes to performance and monitoring, quality inspection and identification of the quality tolerance at early stages of project lifecycle can be achieved using integrated GIS and BIM solutions. And finally, when it comes to operations and maintenance, it helps in enabling advanced predictive modeling for engineers to perform a virtual stress test on infrastructure assets. These are few of the stakeholder observations when integrated GIS and BIM solutions are adopted. 59% of the organizations believe that there has been an improvement in data accuracy, and it has helped in reducing project risks like project delays and design to execution conflicts. 62% of the organizations decided to implement GIS in project information, and it has led to an integrated multiple data platform. 55% of the project stakeholders believe that integrating GIS and BIM solutions have increased a collaborative workflow. And 63% organizations have adopted integrated GIS and BIM solutions for decreasing the time taken for data retrieval as well as validation. Now let's look at the return on investment of using integrated GIS and BIM solutions. So according to the global standards, around 4% of the stakeholders said that they are not able to, like they are still having negative ROI. However, 52% of the stakeholders or the respondents said that there has been a positive ROI. And in terms of the degree of positive ROI, also 30% of the stakeholders said that 50 to 30 they are having a return on investment of around 50 to 100% using integrated BIM and GIS solutions. So this is another study that we made, and this was part of our GeoBIM market in AEC industry report produced by Geospatial World. So when we divided the projects into small scale projects and large scale projects, we saw that in terms of small scale projects, the average design time has been saved by 22.2%, whereas the average construction time has been saved by almost 45 days, and there has been also a 5.9% average project cost that has been saved. In case of larger projects, which are length of more than 10 kilometers or an area of more than 100 square kilometer, the average design time saved has been around 28%, whereas the construction time that has been saved is almost double of that of small projects, which is 90 days. And in case of the average project cost saved, that is also around 13%. This is have a look at this integrated GIS and maturity model. We will actually be talking about this in our penultimate session, so we will be discussing more on this in that session. Thank you. So we will be moving on to the next session. I would like to welcome the two speakers who are joining us for this session. Mark Goldman, Director, AEC Industry Solutions, Esri. Hi, Mark.
Hello, good morning. Good evening.
Good morning. And Eric, he's the Director of Infrastructure Business Strategy, Autodesk.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Eric. Welcome. Yeah. So first of all, I would like both Mark and Eric to give a little bit of like a brief introduction about yourself, and then we will take the conversation forward. Mark, you can start.
I'd love to. Thank you, Titus. Thank you, Geospatial World, for organizing this summit today, for working with us on the report that you referenced and the stats that you presented. I look forward to the next few hours getting into this topic. I'm Mark Goldman. I'm the AEC Industry Solutions Director at Esri. Worked at Esri for a few years now, helping get the word out about GIS and its importance in AEC workflows. I've been working in the AEC technology industry for really my entire career, going on my third decade here. Worked at Autodesk a couple of times and other large players and startups in the AEC space. Practiced architectural engineering many years ago, and worked with Autodesk on this report. And I think we've got some great topics to dive into today. Eric, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to see you, Mark, and Titus. Thank you for the invite to yourself and the Geospatial World team. Myself, I wear two hats at Autodesk. I run the global strategy for our infrastructure business unit, and infrastructure for us is predominantly defined as transportation, water, and site design. And my second role here is I help manage our relationship with Esri, and that's center for the topic today in the sense of bringing our worlds of BIM and GIS together.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mark. So let's jump into the conversation. So first of all, I would like Mark, to define what do you and your company Esri mean by BIM and GIS integration. How would you like to
Sure.
define it?
Yeah, I think that's a great topic to get started with. I know that we've got a number of probably range of folks on the summit here today, this event, who might have a strong understanding of BIM or a strong understanding of GIS, or maybe a strong understanding of both. It's kind of rare these days, quite frankly, and we're trying to make that easier to have an expertise in either and be able to leverage the other. So, BIM, from my perspective, is a description of what you build. It is a process around which you bring information together to describe a built environment, the plan to do it using virtual representations of the geometries. There's authoring tools, there's viewing tools, there's analysis tools against that BIM information. But primarily it's about what you build and maybe how you build as well. GIS, Geographic Information Systems, is a combination of data and software. The data is typically non-graphic data, but we present it graphically. We use location as a means of putting information on a screen graphically in context. So GIS in the context of AEC work and BIM work is where you, it's the layers of information that get presented in 2D and 3D with BIM information these days, more often in AEC now than ever before, that allows for spatial analysis. Layers like transportation information, weather information, geographic information, city information overlaid together with your BIM information allows for what you build and where you build to be considered together. And it's opening up the floodgates to all kinds of workflows and analysis and better decision making in AEC.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for summing up your definition so beautifully.
That's not so simple. Less than one sentence, certainly.
Eric, your view on the definition, how would you like to define GIS plus BIM integration?
Well, not to repeat what Mark said, I think Mark gave us a good definition. I think the common thread that connects the two data sets is they're both spatial in nature.
Right.
Be it different in the sense of the engineering world and data that we create through the BIM process, it's typically a very detailed, highly accurate micro model, if you will, of your asset, be it any type of engineering asset, be it infrastructure, road, rail, a vertical building and the like. And of course, GIS is a much broader footprint, more of a macro view of our natural environment. And so given they're both spatial but different in nature, bringing those two worlds together creates a tremendous amount of synergy in how the AEC community can use that data.
Right. Thank you, Eric. So, Eric, what do you think are the the driving forces that are bringing these two solutions, BIM and GIS information together, especially for AEC industry?
Well, I think maybe in terms of a little context first to the question, I think the timing is now right. I say that because it took a few years for the BIM process to be adopted throughout AEC. We saw that first mature in the vertical building design business and then go to our horizontal assets. But today, I think it's fair to say that the industry recognizes the advantages and the return on investment by deploying a BIM process across the life cycle. So with that in mind, I think it also took our GIS industry by storm with the advent of a lot of new technologies over the recent years. I probably will date myself if I go all the way back to the advent of GPS technologies, but certainly closer to today's time, we've seen a lot of sensors and platforms and data acquisition tools. So the data was finally there to fuel the GIS systems, and you would throw computers into that mix as well. So with all that coming together, the time is right. Now what's driving bringing these two worlds together, your question? I think it's a host of things, Titus. One is sustainability and resiliency. I think that's top of mind for all governments and executives around the globe. And as we look to build new assets in our built environment, or to rehabilitate or retrofit existing assets to keep pace with demand, we can no longer do that in a localized environment. We need to bring the context of the real world or the neighborhood into the planning, the design, and certainly the construction operation phase of that asset. So the first thing I would point to is top of mind with sustainability and resiliency. The second point I would make is our projects are simply getting larger. They're getting more complex. And we have to have all of the information possible to try to better manage and plan for those. And I think the third issue is simply, as the world is changing, I think the importance of data or information has escalated tremendously, especially with the pandemic and remote workforce and the like. And you could put cloud-enabled technologies coming to the forefront into that statement. And with that, I think companies throughout AEC are now talking about things like the digital transformation. And so the more information they can put their hands on, be it BIM models or models created through a BIM process of those assets, coupled with GIS information and the spatial richness of that industry, just bides them well in that digital transformation.
Right. Thank you. That was quite insightful. Mark, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo, I think, everything that Eric said there. I mean, these are things that we talk about on a pretty regular basis as we're trying to figure out our strategy. What are the drivers? Why are things happening right now at a pace that we hadn't seen? The intersection of GIS and BIM, in many ways we're driving it, but we're also responding to a demand. There's a need for this information to be brought together, for decision making to be as information based and rich with insights as possible. And GIS and BIM brought together enable that. I think there's a number of factors that were taking place over the last few years that have been accelerated by the COVID pandemic, working from home and such. The increase in our ability to do practically infinite computing just about anywhere is amazing and was something that we've been talking about for about a decade. And I'd say it's here right now. The level of visualization that we experience on our handheld devices, our tablets, our desktop computers now, our expectation for that type of interaction in our daily life, in our business world, and our personal worlds, we're interacting with 3D spaces on these types of devices regularly. And the expectation that information that is our spatial world, our designed and natural world that we are architecting, engineering, operating, and managing, we expect that level of information presentation. And we're capable of doing it. The devices have improved. The bandwidth and access to the internet is just about everywhere. Even our most remote job sites now having a Wi-Fi connection comes with electricity and water. So the changes just in the last 5 years of just technological wave, lifting us all up, and our expectations is a big shift. And the expectation for transparency of clients. The owners are no longer content with project management through Gantt charts presented once a month. Clients are expecting to be involved in projects at a level using these technologies that we've talked about, getting insights and not surprises in ways that will knock down some of those information concerns, information gaps, problems of the construction industry that are so much based on lack of information or lack of access to information. GIS and BIM are bringing these together, allowing information to be presented to more people. It's refreshing. It's exciting for me. I'm sure for Eric as well. We both go back in this industry a few decades, and these are things that we've been promising and looking forward to. I think that we're delivering on a lot of promises that we've been making over the last couple of decades on tech for AEC.
Right, Mark. Thank you. And what, according to you, are the major stakeholders who are actually benefiting from this? I mean, the reason I'm asking is because maybe 10 years back, BIM was more of a tool that were being used by designers and architects, whereas GIS as a platform was mostly used by urban planners and these sort of designations. So right now, with the combination of these two solutions, which stakeholders do you believe are like most benefiting from this integration?
Eric, you want to start there?
Yeah, sure. I think your question somewhat explains that one graph you had in the introduction as well. When we look at the convergence of BIM and GIS, it seemed to be most readily adopted in the planning stage. And I think that's just because of the understanding of GIS and that part of the project lifecycle. And certainly BIM, as I said before, sort of grew up in the design phase of the lifecycle. But if you look at the information that these two systems are providing, there's a wealth of opportunity for that seamless flow of information throughout the complete life cycle. And we're starting to see that more and more in the construction or the build phase. And certainly if you look at the owner operate phase of the life cycle, most of the asset management systems and the like are built on top of a spatial reference frame, a GIS map, if you will. So we believe that graph will change quickly over the years. And again, if you think of the definition of BIM, it's the seamless movement of information throughout the life cycle, reduction of data loss, and the ease of data handover. So as this is occurring, obviously all stakeholders along the life cycle will benefit. But to your question, I think part of what's driving this and the stakeholder that benefits the most is the owner. And again, if you think of the life cycle, that's the long tail in the curve. Once we build these assets and hand them over, they're in existence for 50 to 100 plus years. And so there's a lot of work to do in terms of maintaining them and operating them and understanding them. And so I think the richness of all this information we create from the very get-go being preserved throughout the life cycle and made available to the owner, and to be able to manage that asset in the context of the real world and the local environment is the real benefactor, or the strongest benefactor from this process.
Right. I would agree completely. I mean, the owner, and with some caveats or perhaps some qualifications, an owner who is not concerned for whatever reason with the long-term asset in which their business operates, perhaps, there's some businesses that are just putting up a shell, and the actual assets themselves don't matter for, because the period of time that they're going to consume them or operate within them is so short-term. They just don't have that type of a span to think about. So the longer-term owners, campus operators, utility companies, certainly cities and of all sizes, anyone who's owning assets for any period of time where maintaining them, managing them, depreciating them, understanding how well they're performing over time so that you can get ahead of maintenance and keep your machineries, your utilities, your networks, your roads running. So that long-term perspective owner is certainly the one who benefits the most, one who wants to improve all of those processes, the plan, design, build, operate workflow. I jotted down a few notes during your intro there, Titus, and that was one of them that I wrote down, plan, design, build, operate, wanting to touch on that graph that you showed. Certainly bringing together information earlier in a project helps decision-making later on. The more informed you are earlier, the better your project is going to run. We've seen graphs over the years that show how BIM information, BIM projects, BIM execution causes information to be much larger, much greater, much more accessible at the beginning of a project, improving the entire project. GIS and BIM brought together simply amplify that. More information in more people's hands simply allows you to get more value out of the project. So we're finding the people who are thinking about the long-term operations of their project, who are involved in design build projects or IPD projects where the entire team benefits from the process, knowing that at the end what they have to hand over serves the owner. Those types of projects certainly are taking advantage of the GIS and BIM integration and benefiting from it more than just the sort of, a firm who drops in, executes a project, takes their money and runs off to the next one. That's a short-term type of business, and maybe they're the ones who aren't benefiting. But I'd say it's the long-term operators, the mega projects, and those with a long mindset.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so moving on. So right now there is this buzzword, or like a big buzz that has been created around this concept called digital twins. And digital twins, maybe like a few years back, it was mostly used in an automobile industry or manufacturing industry, but somehow it has now percolated into our AEC industry as well as digital cities. So how do you think is this adoption of an integration of GIS and BIM, it's kind of impacting the concept of digital twin?
Yeah, I'll jump on that just because it's pretty fresh in my mind. I've been speaking on the topic and diving into the topic and writing on the topic of digital twins quite a bit lately. And you're right, it was something that in AEC was fringe. 3 to 5 years ago, I was starting to see some RFPs and customers, clients asking for digital twins and trying to describe what they were seeking, which I'll give my definition around that, which is essentially a virtual representation of a physical object or project. In the context of AEC, it's probably anything as small as a building, as big as a city. And that virtual representation, we're able to observe its behaviors and affect its behaviors. Understand the conditions of that bridge, that roadway, that building, that railway. In real time, typically sensors placed that provide feedback into the virtual representation, and then either manually or autonomously affecting the physical project through the virtual representation. So that's kind of my definition of digital twins. And having the what you build and where you build brought together, and all the richness of the data that gets created during the planning, the designing, the construction process, if all that information can be brought together into some kind of a connected or common data environment. I like connected instead of common because the real world, we're connected. We're not singularly using any single silo. If you can bring that all together for a team, as Eric was saying, to tap into and consider the entire project lifecycle, this concept of digital twin so perfectly fits into AEC work.
Right. Thank you, Aman. Eric?
No, I definitely agree with all of that. I think what I would add is that couldn't agree more. Digital twin has not been invented by the AEC industry. It's been around a long time. It's been used in manufacturing for decades. It has come into our vocabulary more recently. I agree with Mark's definition. Simply put, it's the connection between the physical world and the digital world. And the other thing I'd point out, it's not like you create a digital twin of your asset and it's one and done. It's a requirement to update it and to make it real time, if you will, in most cases or use cases. But with that in mind, I think our industry is always quick to latch on to the next shiny object or terminology that's invented. But the truth of the matter is you can't create a digital twin without having data sets and processes like BIM and GIS in place. That's what allows you to create that digital twin from the first place. And I know in our industry, we've had a lot of conversations around smart cities in recent years, and more recently now it's the metaverse. Well, this is just a scale problem in my mind. You need a BIM process. You need good engineering, detailed information. You need to bring it together with GIS to have a real world view of that asset. And as you build the digital twin of the asset and connect it to other assets with digital twins, eventually you build them up over time, you would have a smart city. And if you go to the next level and you connect all those smart cities with each other, you have a metaverse. So to me, it's the same principles. It's just a different scale in which you're speaking. But the enabler for all of this is a good BIM process coupled with good spatial GIS data.
Yeah, the cynic in me calls digital twin just a marketing construct. And, it's something that we've been doing already. We've been bringing together the physical and the virtual, approaching autonomous operations, approaching real-time monitoring, and now we've got a good term, and I'm happy for it. I've been connected to the Digital Twin Consortium, just did an event with them. I'm hearing about their growth. Their work is affecting our industry, and I understood that digital twin went back to the Apollo mission. Earliest days of computing, and our successful attempt to get to space was enabled through this concept of having a physical and a virtual that could be monitored and managed and ensure safety and launch.
Right. Thank you, Mark. So coming to the challenges, so are there any, I'm sure there are challenges in this integration and adoption of this integrated BIM and GIS solutions, and the challenges are like different in different parts of the world. Like for developing countries, the challenges may be a little different from what developed countries are facing. So what's your take on that? What are the main challenges that are not that's there, which is not letting this integration to reach that point that the industry wants it to be?
Well, I'll jump in, Mark, maybe with a little bit of a perspective. I think your question's the right question, because when I think of back a few years ago when we first started speaking with Esri around our partnership and what would it mean to bring these two capabilities or worlds together, our customers were telling us three things. They were saying, GIS is very important to us in terms of our workflows and for us to remain competitive and to build efficient assets, or to build assets efficiently. And so GIS is important to us, number one. Number two, it's in our everyday workflows. It may be siloed in different departments, but within our organization, it's used each and every day. But then the third one, which is really the crux of what Mark and I and all the smart people at Esri and Autodesk have been working on, is, damn, it's hard to bring these two worlds together. The convergence of this information is not easy. And it's not easy because we're dealing with all these import-export things, these different data formats, logging into one system only to have to log out and log into another. So it was making it very complex and cumbersome and inefficient for our customers. And really, I think we put the stake in the ground when we started talking to each other and said, that's our mission. Our mission is to make it easy for our users to combine our technologies and capability. And that's really the mission we've been on, both at the desktop level and now more recently at the cloud level. And, if we can do that, I think the advantages across the life cycle, across many different persona and many different use cases will be there. And yes, the challenges could be different in different countries because of different standards and so forth. But I think what's helping tremendously, certainly in the AEC industry, is the advent of data interoperability, driven by some initiatives like IFC and developing a common data exchange format so that we can bring information regardless of the system that was used to produce it. And I'm sure there's many more, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I'll try to pick up from there. The challenges, I don't think, are too different from, as it pertains to GIS and BIM integration as to any other kind of technical challenge. It's not necessarily the technology at this point. I think that, like Eric mentioned, standards, IFC, the recognition of interoperability being so important, a word that most people couldn't say, much less spell, some years ago, is now just common in conversations across AEC. And I know that I'm immersed in it, so I might see it more often than others, but I was just at an event the other day and just everyone in the audience talking interoperability, and these were city planners. These weren't CAD geeks like myself. So the challenges aren't necessarily getting the data between the two systems anymore. It's more about, two people working together who historically have been exchanging shape files and DXF files and doing things a certain way and just gotten used to it, and they get their work done. And the idea of change is exciting, but the specifics about changing day to day and changing their work and learning new things and becoming less productive are difficult to consume at all levels of a business. So what we need to do, the challenge for us, is to present this value as these capabilities, this GIS and BIM. These are business improvements. These are capabilities that are going to keep AEC firms themselves resilient and sustainable and able to deliver on the projects that we've been talking about, of great complexity and great expectations by owners. So I don't think the challenges anymore are how to get the GIS information into the BIM and the BIM information into the GIS, or get an application put together that presents the deep insights that can come when you bring these layers of information together. I've simply seen amazing examples that I know were not put together by rocket scientists, but were done in often no code situations, bringing maps and BIM together and presenting insights to projects that you just couldn't get any other way. It was more about firms and individuals being, willing to put their neck out a little bit, take a risk, investigate technologies, prototype, proof of concept something, and then change the way their business is being run and becoming a leader because of these enabling technologies. That's what I see. I don't think that we're anymore at a point where the challenge is it's too difficult to get these two systems to work together. I think it's now at a point of just basic change management and people recognizing that these things they're seeing on screen, these webinars they're dialing into, these things people are talking about aren't so hard anymore.
Right. So a little bit of more initiative from the project owners that should actually give that push. And apart from that, do you think also there is I'm pretty sure there is a role played by the governments, in terms of coming up with new policies or mandates when it comes to construction? So do you believe that is also going to push this enhancement of integrated GIS and BIM solutions and its adoption?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I just wanted to pile on to Mark's earlier comment, or last comment too, Titus. I think the good work that your organization did in this report gives us good evidence that we're on the right path here, because you had that one chart that is starting to bring forward data to defend the statement that you can save time, you can save money by using a combination of BIM information with GIS, and that's reassuring to us in the mission we're on for this, because if you think of the AEC world, all projects share two common attributes. It's very difficult to produce them on schedule and on budget. Yeah. And your two metrics are helping companies solve that. So that I just wanted to put a plug in for that, and hopefully more research and data will continue to give evidence to it. But if I could speak from the side of BIM and the maturity we've seen BIM go through over the years, certainly governments getting behind this movement was helpful. I don't know if it needs to be as forceful as a mandate, but certainly developing BIM standards and putting them in place in terms of how projects are undertaken and delivered certainly lights the fire under the engineering and construction communities to be more efficient and to be better stewards of their trade to deliver better projects for the public and for the government. So I think getting governments behind this is important, yes. And certainly from a business perspective, people are going to move in this direction if we can show them the return on investment that you shared with us earlier as well as all the great use cases and benefits of those use cases can bring into their organization to make them more competitive, allow them better win rates, ability to simply win more work, differentiate from the competition, and so forth. So governments certainly have a role to play in this.
Yeah, and they're playing that role. I mean, Certainly the UK's work
Yep.
has influenced the rest of the globe. It's finally making its way across the pond, as we say, and the US is utilizing some of the success, the processes, some of the people who helped initiate some of the UK's BS 1192, ISO 19650, all these, globally now adopted structure standards, methods of better project delivery. So I think there definitely is a role there. It just makes sense. The largest landlord in the world, I believe, is the U.S. Government Services Agency. It's incumbent on them as a taxpayer for them to use my money to build projects most efficiently and effectively and not be wasteful. So the tools that we have available for them to do that are being put in place and influencing other projects. When a contractor or design firm works on a project for one of these agencies around the globe, they learn best practices, hopefully, in GIS and BIM. And then the next project they do for a commercial developer, a campus, a small city who might not have that mandate, they use those same practices and see that they work, and it changes the way they do business because the government mandated or some requirement that ensured better processes. The term, a term we've used for the last decade or so related to construction projects are BIM execution plans. I'm glad to see those including information about spatial data and spatial properties and GIS in general. I'd love to see that term BIM execution plan just become a project execution plan, and maybe that's what it is. And in those documents, the use of and the value of GIS being explained is starting to become, I know, more normal.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Great insights. So I think we are almost out of the time for this session. So my final question for both of you: what is the future like? What is the future like for integrated GIS and BIM according to Autodesk and Esri?
Want to go first, Eric?
Sure. Very bright. No, I think if we look at the advent of cloud technologies and where we're going with data and information overall as an industry, I think it has changed our perspective and our strategy of where we think the future will take us. As an example, I think the advent of the cloud sort of lowers the barrier to entry for a lot of companies to get into the be it the engineering service side of the industry or the GIS side. And that is true, but I think the differentiation that companies like Esri and Autodesk have is that the information we're creating is very rich in terms of content and the use cases it will support. It's smart data, if you will. There's a lot of information to unpack there. And that's exactly what our companies do, is we help our customers unlock the value of that information and how that information can be used to help them solve problems. So with platform technologies evolving, the use of the cloud evolving within our industries, bringing these two capabilities together just seems like the natural marriage. And I think it's going to be a very good marriage well into the future as we look at how we unlock that data. And, if I can speak to the engineering side of it, certainly there's a lot of movement towards technologies like generative design, DFMA, in terms of how we drive more efficiency and into the construction space. And the time is good right now for all of us because, we're coming out from under this pandemic. A lot of countries around the globe are using stimulus programs to sort of restart the economies. And those restarts are in rebuilding or retrofitting existing infrastructure to keep pace with a lot of global trends you hear us talk about, be it population growth, urbanization, and the like. So there's a tremendous amount of work for us all to do within AEC. There's sort of an injection of more capital to get it done. And I think the advent of bringing BIM and GIS together is driving some of the efficiencies, and we can do more with with less spending. So I think the future and the demand is bright for both our companies and for this trend.
Yeah, I completely agree. GIS existed in one world with one set of professionals, and CAD and BIM and AEC work tended to exist in another for decades, 3 or 4 decades almost. And yet in the last 3 or 4 years, certainly with Autodesk, the connectors we've made, moving from being competitors and adversaries to an alliance here and a commitment to working together, we've made great strides. First, Autodesk with the connectors that you guys built within your authoring applications that enabled connection to our cloud data, and then within our environment, connecting into BIM 360 and now ACC, and being able to consume content in its raw native format has then led to the most recent product, ArcGIS GeoBIM, which brings the two cloud environments together. That's kind of leading edge, let's just say, connecting clouds. But what's next with 5G on job sites and the rise in use of reality capture in all means, whether it's high definition ground-based collection of data, or the improvements in aerial photography, or the fact that we're getting LiDAR on our phones now. All of this data collection needs to be connected and collected and analyzed in context. What you plan and what you build need to be understood, and that's GIS and BIM brought together. So, we were at a point, like I said earlier, the exchange of files, shape files, DXF files was the norm. People are still doing that. We've got to let them know there's so many ways of working. And it's a bright future in all regards, I think, of bringing together the what you build and where you build.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Eric, for summing it up so beautifully. I think we have reached the end of this session. So thanks again, and I hope the audience really enjoyed the session, hearing Eric and Mark, sharing their bits and pieces about the need of integrated GIS and BIM for AEC industry. So moving on, we'll be moving on to the next session. It's on GeoBIM for integration of survey and design workflows, and Mark will be moderating this session. So maybe in a couple of minutes, we will be starting this next session.
Very good.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mark. We'll be joining again in the next sessions.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you. All right. Well, let's get started here. We've got a great session teed up here with professionals from around the globe, with perspectives on BIM for many years, GIS for many years, some of them a combination of both. You all know me. I appreciate you listening for the last hour or so, myself and Eric and Titus, talking about the report and some high-level topics around the intersection of GIS and BIM. I'm going to let this wonderful panel go through and give a brief introduction of themselves, and we'll just work our way across the slide here. George, we go back a couple of years now working together on various events and activities. I'm really glad to have you here. I actually dubbed you Dr. GeoBIM about 2 years ago, so it's perfect to have you on this panel. Go ahead, George.
Hello, Mark. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, Mark, having this discussion together today. It was great to hear from you and Eric on the latest and greatest around GIS and BIM. I would like to thank Geospatial World for the invitation, of course, and the great opportunity to be in this panel. My name is George Flores. A short introduction about me. I'm the GIS lead for Skanska UK infrastructure. So essentially, with infrastructure, as Eric explained before, I'm overseeing the GIS strategy and implementation on our highways, rail, and water sectors throughout the entire project lifecycle, from tender, from work winning up to handover. And of course, I'm a very, I'd say, strong advocate of GIS and BIM coming together, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, George. Parveen, we met virtually before we met physically, I believe. You recently participated in one of our events, an Esri event. Would you want to give a brief introduction of yourself before we jump into some questions and topics and discussion? You're up, Parveen. I think, Titus, we need you to control the stage, though. There we go. Nope, it's George. Parveen, are you there? If can't get Parveen, we'll come back around for an introduction. Amr, you there? Oh, there's Parveen. Great.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. Long time.
Yes.
Yes. So me and Mark has a long history. We have worked together in 2007-8 at the time of Setelier.
Yep.
And I represent a company called the BIM Engineers. We do BIM and GIS integration across the globe. We have presence, our offices in 20 countries, but project-wise, we cover almost 80 countries across the globe, from Australia to US. And it has been a fun journey integrating two diverse and very complex technologies and bringing them together. It has been a pleasant journey. Mark had worked on both sides of the table, BIM as well as GIS, and lots of interesting things to share. I hope it will be an interesting session today.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, as I work on projects around the globe, some of the things we talked about earlier, you must have an interesting perspective, Parveen, as far as adoption and standards and such. Amr, can we get a brief introduction?
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very good.
Excited to be in this great discussion with you and everyone. My name is Amr Rafat. I'm the Vice President of Virtual Design Construction and Technology at Wendover. I lead a team of VDC. We focus on offering real-time solutions to resolve the problems on the job sites or challenges with BIM, virtual reality, prefabrication, MEP coordination, drone mapping, laser scanning. And we work a lot on Wendover is one of the leaders of modular construction in the country. And we do work around the US and in Canada, building hospitals, life science, academic, custom homes. Can't wait to discuss how we use technology and GeoBIM spatial information to transform the way we build. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, it seems that the challenges of DFMA and modularization, the logistics, the supply chain issues with that means of construction / manufacturing, GIS, who's already solved problems in logistics, could really be well suited there. Thank you, Elmer. Urmas.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
I am from the Rail Baltica project, and this project is about to build a railway across 3 Baltic states from North Estonia, then comes Latvia, then Lithuania. It's in Europe and south of Finland, if you know where Finland is. Mark, you know, probably, I'm sure,
Yes.
but for the broader audience,
No, indeed.
take a look at the map. What we are doing is building the asset register based on the IFC format models. We are importing them into GIS and then make them visible to different kind of parties.
Wonderful.
So
Sounds like
that would be
kind of
the
project.
summary.
Sounds like a perfect kind of project to bring the two together, a large scale project, standards and regulations and progress, probably wanting to be known by a large group of stakeholders, interoperability, various layers.
Sure. And I presented our solution also last year during the Esri conference in Baltics, and it is visible in internet also. I will show the QR code later.
Very good. Thank you. Patrick, I'll let you introduce yourself. We go way back now.
Yeah. Hey, Mark. Back to college.
Yeah, kind of.
So I'm Pat Wallace. I lead the Esri Built Environment Lab. I've been at Esri for about 11 years. I came from industry, from the Coast Guard, where we were doing early work, integrating BIM and GIS, like back in 2004 to support facilities planning and operations. And so things have gotten easier, right? So it's been a great honor, I guess, and fun, and maybe frustration at times to be part of the sausage making process now, working at Esri, trying to make this happen. So I recently left a group where we started a product called ArcGIS Indoors, and so we birthed that, and my team helped deliver it. So now I'm doing a little something different with the lab. So glad to be here. Glad to talk about BIM and GIS.
Yeah, I know that you've been in the throes of it for years, Pat.
Yeah.
Studied architecture, practiced some architecture, and your role when we first met at Esri, we sat down and it was really an epiphany for me, the way you described buildings as just these kind of containers for businesses to operate.
Yeah, they're vehicles for people and equipment. That's all they are.
Yeah.
If we have people or equipment, we wouldn't have buildings.
There you go. All right, thanks. Jason, I think you just joined us here. Love to hear from you. Brief intro. Oh, you're on mute. There you go. Nope, still on mute, Jason. We'll get all of our technicalities worked out and then go around.
How's that now?
There we go. Thank you.
Got to have the right input with StreamYard, apparently, so apologize for that. I'm Jason Barber with Autodesk. I'm a senior transportation strategy manager. Background's a civil engineer originally, did a lot of work, designing as well as building and operating large, complex infrastructure projects, mostly roads and highways, airports, transit lines, transit stations. Certainly GIS and BIM is, we've been using GIS for a long time, but I wish we had the convergence of both in the past. So it would have been made life a lot easier. How's that?
Certainly would have, but we made great headway, like we were talking about earlier, and we'll probably get into some of that in more detail. I want to start out with Amr. The fact that your company is a construction company, and GIS and BIM we talked about earlier is most widely being adopted on the plan and design side, and then in operations. You're using certainly BIM very effectively in construction workflows. I would just like to hear a little bit about your perspective on GIS, on elements of location in construction workflows, whether it's traditional stick-based construction or, as you described, you're a leader in some of the more progressive, modern means of construction. So just starting out from a construction point of view, maybe where do you see this importance of GIS as a means of distributing BIM information or analyzing information from a spatial perspective? Is that something, Amr, you can touch on for a minute?
Sure. Geospatial data has been a key in during construction, during coordination processes. We collect a lot of data, and what's really important is not having the data, it's how we utilize this data using the tools we have to resolve challenges on job sites. So it's not about the technology or what the best drone we use or best laser scanner. It's how we use the data we collect to do constant QA/QC overlays, to detect the conflicts early on in the process, or to support our superintendents on site, or even when we hand the data to the client so they can use the project 10 years from now. It's become a standard for us at Wendover, for example, is to hand the client how we built the project, and not only hand them a Revit model, but also hand them in-wall scans before closing up ceilings and walls, where all the MEP. So 10 years from now, they can use this as-built MEP information to make any additions or maintenance. We've been using recently Autodesk Tandem, for example, to in an academic project to hand in a very smart way this data, how we build a project to an academic client so they can embed it into their future facility maintenance.
So some might argue that the process of collecting more information and organizing and curating it for the client to eventually use down the road is costly and isn't necessarily part of what the contract included to begin with. I mean, you need to get ahead of the project to ensure that the work you're going to do for all this data collection isn't lost profit, I assume. So you're not just doing data collection for the sake of it. It's in workflows, it's in applications. You're putting it to use.
And to give it to them in a way they can use it. The clients are not as good as we are in visualizing things in 3D or having to learn how to use Revit. That's why solutions like Tandem or other solutions, web-based solutions, make it easier for them, or with no training even, for the client to see, oh, what's behind the wall, this wall in room 101, because I want to resolve a problem or add something. So giving it to the client in an easy way. And we've been trying to do that for years, but finally in the recent 2-3 years, we found innovative solutions such as Autodesk Work or others to really give us the tool and the technology solution with because at the end of the project, we end up with a lot of data and fully coordinated BIM models. Clients can't use that necessarily, but we make it an easy way for them to digest it and use it for their future use. Thank you.
George, you showed me some examples recently. We were on a call talking about an article, and you showed me some integrations of GIS and BIM applications that you've built out. Maybe you just want to talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing, how it's changing the way you guys are doing some work.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I'd like actually to follow up on one of your comments earlier about an information management execution plan and GIS execution plan, and I'm happy to tell you that we are seeing a fantastic evolution in the UK regarding the requirements around digital and the transition, to what we call digital engineering from the very early stages of the project lifecycle. Just to give some context to the audience, Skanska UK is a construction company. Skanska is a global construction company, essentially. So we are very much recipients as well as producers of information throughout this part of the life cycle, and where we have found the integration of GIS and BIM being unique and giving us a significant, if you like, advantage to how we use to how we are transforming essentially the way we're working, is on connecting all these different stages of the life cycle, from the tender, from the handover of the information that has been created, 2, 3, X number of years ago, and we all know how quickly technology changes, and interoperability comes to play when we think about that, and up to the handover stage. And in between, you have your tender process, you have your design, you have the construction process, and as you said, Mark, there is lots of data that is being created, but is not necessarily handed over, or there is data that has been created without necessarily being fit for purpose in the first place. And this leads to great, to increased cost and waste. And essentially, the BIM GIS integration allows us not only to improve this, but proactively structure our information the right way to make sure, that we are moving the pieces of the puzzle, if you'd like, in the right way.
So I'm curious. I want to touch on some of this, Parveen. You're seeing projects from all over the globe. You're helping push the industry by providing services around BIM, accelerating people's adoption to BIM and GIS. We've got George from the UK, where the adoption of digital standards have been proven, and the rest of the globe is catching up. What do you see as far as GIS and BIM coming together from perhaps a meta view, many nations that you're seeing projects executed across?
Yeah, Mark, what is happening in our industry, if you see last 1 decade, we have done lots of integration, and there is quite a lot of progress in the integration of BIM and GIS, but still I will say we could do more. Lots of possibility we can explore. See, the sky is the limit. We can integrate every possible thing or element outside the building to the services inside the building. And if that integration is seamless, we can make smart cities, smart building, greener, lean, clean, green construction, everything. We can save lots of money. The most delay happens in the construction project. Almost all the projects are delayed in terms of timeline, cost overrun, time overrun. But if this progress between the GIS and BIM happens on time, accurate, we can save lots of money, and buildings and the infrastructure projects can be more, I would say, smart, and
Okay.
we can save time and money.
I want to have Urmas touch on that. I mean, you're very closely connected to a project that is promising to deliver on a lot of these things that we've talked about, digital twin concepts and the monitoring and automation of this piece of infrastructure across Europe. Are we still just talking, or are we delivering? Are you hearing, as you're bringing together BIM information and GIS dashboards, and these applications and solutions can make their way into many people who need to consume and view this data that previously haven't? Are we there yet? Or are we just kind of on the edge and haven't really seen the success? I'm kind of alluding to some of the ROI information that Ted has showed earlier, some of the return on investment. Some firms saying that they're seeing great ROI, and others not understanding it quite yet, is what I get out of those charts. So as someone who's very closely connected to a project with lots of promise, Urmas, can you maybe touch on some of these things that we're talking about as the reality of them?
Yes. Actually, we are doing all of that in real life. It looks like we are one of the pioneers who decided to build up the asset register in GIS. Because for most people, GIS is just some visualized layers and operating with those layers. But for us, it is a database, and we fill in that database with asset information from IFC. As Eric mentioned earlier, the open standards are really important. Our designers, according to the contract, they have to deliver us the models in IFC format and, of course, in native format. So if somebody wants to work on them later, it would be useful to have those native formats also. But we have not prescribed to them what native software to use. So they deliver the IFC models in different design phases. First, in value engineering, there are multiple models because there are multiple possible solutions. But then when we enter into the master design phase, then it has been already decided that we will take this approach. So we import the model into GIS using ArcGIS Pro interoperability extension. And here on my background, you see also, for example, information about one pipe that is now on my right hand. You see the blue pipe and the text is on the left hand if you see the picture like I see it.
Yep.
Yes.
Then we have the detailed information or the most critical information about the asset. So we give the basic information in the that is in the model. We keep it in the database next to the asset. So the most relevant information is the object, or actually the asset ID. We have certain logic how to assign the codes to it. Then we use the site ID, simple 2 letters and 4 digits. And then on the bottom, you see the object classification code, which is our invention. It's actually a number, but for the people we show the text. And then PR code type code is the Uniclass 2015 code, plus the custom type code, because you have different the pipes with different width and different length, but Uniclass code is the same. So standards are really important in our life, and but actually making people understand how important it is, it's rather difficult. Also in our company, but outside, it applies to the outsiders also, because the construction companies, they are used to the old-fashioned way, meaning creating PDFs. Also the designer, despite the contract that they have to design in BIM first,
right,
and then produce the drawings. Unfortunately, in many cases, we have seen that it's done vice versa.
So
But
what you're showing
they are
there
learning.
is BIM content, let's say, I hate to say the word BIM model in the background there, that originated in a BIM authoring tool, could be one of many, exported as IFC, brought into ArcGIS Pro, published out as a web scene where all the properties are maintained. But all this is in a database, like you said. You sent me some notes earlier about GIS being a database. It's not an Excel file. It's truly data that is pulled up on screen, spatially organized and available for navigation.
Yes.
Disseminating the information that was typically locked down. And I want to actually ask Pat and Jason, representing the vendors, representing Esri and Autodesk, and having lots of hands-on time. Your thoughts, Patrick, that we talked about a minute ago. The building is this package and container for a business to operate. Is GIS and BIM required to deliver on that promise? You might have been delivering on that 3-5 years ago before Esri and Autodesk were working together well. You might have had that same philosophy. Do we need BIM and GIS necessarily? Are there other means to the end here, or no? I'm kind of being a devil's advocate here.
I'd say it's required if you want to do things efficiently without wasting a lot of money, right? I mean, there is forethought required to do this. I mean, I think that, I put a diagram together, but I mean, I'll just describe, what I'm thinking is that, GIS provides a way to consume AEC technologies, the result of those technologies in a multi-scale way, right? So if you think back to like the ISO 19650 document and how it describes BIM and a CDE really is an information product, right? It's what you do with the technology, and it's wrapped around a workflow. So it's supposed to meet a specific purpose, a specific business intent. So the novel thing that GIS does with BIM, right, it allows you to aggregate individual building models into an asset information model that can be leveraged to do just what Umas was talking about, right? Like creating this database, for all your assets. And I've been specifically more involved on the operations side and the planning side. And so for both of those, you have to have, immediate visibility, total asset visibility, from portfolio scale down to an individual building or individual space to make the type of decisions that you need to make. And this all links back to concepts about digital twin, when the real world interventions that take place via those information products and a person or some automated result are fed back into the system and affect, the configuration of the information product or the data that it displays, right? So that connectedness is what a digital twin is. Yeah. So these things are all interrelated, and it could save you a tremendous amount of time and money.
Yeah, I mean, Pat nailed it at the beginning when he said, yeah, you could do it in the past, but how much time and how much money do you want to spend? I mean, we're all dealing with shortages of resources and professionals, not just, in terms of labor, but also materials and things like that. And, from a vendor standpoint, as technology providers, I feel like it's our responsibility to help our customers do those things as efficiently as possible. And, that convergence of GIS and BIM information, it just gives context to, we come from the design focus and then moving into construction. Like, without that GIS information to give it that real world context and pull in all the constraints, whether that's parcel information or utilities or, yes, that's happened for a long time, but in the past it was, hey, let's go out and, do an ALTA survey, or let's go out and use the good old fashioned theodolite and chain to start getting all the information about what's our constraints to design from. And that took tons of time, tons of resources. Sometimes that information already existed, but it was just recreating it. And we recreate data through phases of the project so much. And if we can continue to make that more efficient and make it where all the right stakeholders can access the information they need to make the decisions they need to make, streamline that's the win. It really is. And that's where I see the combination of the efforts really starting to play out. It gives that real world context for what you're designing, what you're building.
And that context is what makes data available for decision.
So I'm curious, Amar, I want to ask you, what is perhaps the greatest workflow improvement you've seen, or that you're working on now, maybe bringing together the what and the where, the GIS and the BIM on any kind of projects? And I'm most interested about construction workflows, because I think that we have the greatest opportunity to change the way the construction operations occur with location information. We've yet to really fully tap into that. I'm curious from a construction executive point of view.
Absolutely.
In our project, for example, we plan to gather the information or update the models during the construction phase. We do not update directly the models, but information is put into the database via user-friendly interface. So if you build a pile, then the pile is installed at some date, warranty information is related with, so all of that can be entered directly into the database.
So that direct connection.
So meaning we are reusing the information. And perhaps I could show you my screen for a second. I have here one great slide.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get something up on screen, and then I'll ask Amar to jump in.
I have selected the screen, and now I will hide this, but actually this picture do you see the screen?
There we go, yes.
Yeah, so from 2005 actually. And what is usually we lose the information in each stage of the design and construction. And now our aim at Rail Baltica is to follow that nice blue line that we are adding information to the existing database and not recreating from zero.
I'm really glad you put that on screen, because I was actually, as Jason was talking, I was thinking of the first time that I saw this, what was referred to, it's a sawtooth diagram that as it drops down on each spike, that's as if it's a saw blade. I remember first seeing that from Phil Bernstein back in the early 2000s when I worked at Autodesk, and how these diagrams that were put together for BIM apply just as much and perhaps even amplified around BIM and GIS. So I'm glad you brought that up. Amar, could you maybe jump in from your point of view on again, the promise of this and actually what's being delivered.
Sure. You are bringing up a great point, Mark, is combining GIS information to BIM data has been a game changer for us. I'm going to go very quickly through a couple examples. Here, like drone site scans and constant overlays between what we have for BIM versus what we built so far to make sure what we're building on site is exactly as planned. It's more than an eye in the sky. GIS data has been helping us capture geographical information. So it's been helping us to, in a fraction of time, from ground survey points with ground control points and drone data, we can really scan like this downtown in 1 day with a drone. We use this data also to do digital prefab, to fabricate steel pieces very quickly. We collaborated with Autodesk and the software robotic company to not only capture laser scan data, geospatial data about buildings very quickly in an automated way, but also use the Revit data to lay out building utilities and walls from this geospatial data into BIM. So it works the other way around. We put the geospatial data and then we can lay out and spray utilities and walls. So geospatial data, a combination between what Esri, for example, is doing is where with what from what we have from the Autodesk data or all the BIM data we put into these models using Navisworks and all the great work our VDC teams work with all our trade partners. This together can really transform the way we build and view projects. And to back to your very important question about clients, I see a trend in clients willing to pay, and they already pay for this post-construction data because they really been seeing the value of this and how this been helping them manage their buildings. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Parry, maybe you could touch on that. You work with many clients, like we talked about, around the globe. You're enabling their BIM and GIS. Clients are demanding GIS, or they're demanding solutions to problems, and GIS is the answer? Maybe a little bit of both. I mean, are your clients aware of GIS, or they're just seeking solutions and you're delivering them through GIS?
Of course, Mark. See, GIS has been a buzzword in our industry for last couple of years. BIM is already mature and now people are talking about the integration. Urmas has shown that very nice graph about the information inflow. We call it bell curve. In the BIM, we reverse at the initial stage of design. We need more information because we are virtually doing the construction. That's why we call it virtual design and construction. So we need more information at the initial stage. Same goes with GIS. If the surveys are right, if the collaboration is done properly, then we can reap the maximum benefit in terms of the contour planning, route optimization, even class coordination, quantity, cost verification, bill verification can be done through the integration. So definitely clients are demanding it. And I'm happy to see that growth in last 3-4 years, especially during the pandemic times. People have understood the value of technology and integration with cloud computing, common data environment coming into picture, collaboration platforms like BIM 360 has given a whole new dimensions to the industry.
George,
yes.
George, you're an evangelist, a proponent of these capabilities. Maybe be a little bit of a devil's advocate. What are some of the challenges? You've dove into this years ago and continue to be on the bleeding edge. What are some of the challenges to bringing these together still to solve the problems that your clients are asking for? I know your clients are the likes of HS2 and is it Highways England?
National Highways, yes.
Yeah, so you've got some big clients and demanding clients. Yeah. What do you see as some of the challenges?
And it's also important to take into consideration that there is legacy behind, right? So trying to uniform the old data sets with the new ways of working is always a challenge. I'd say, Mark, in my opinion, there are two main challenges, two categories. The first one are the technical challenges, and there is the interoperability aspect. And we know, like, when we think about GIS, the first thing we think about is geolocation and georeference. But I know there's great work out there, and this starts being resolved from the very early stages of a project, which is great news. There is a more what at least I consider important aspect for us, for the geospatial community, especially since we work in infrastructure, and this is the standardization. And if you'd like, the lack of standards covering adequately infrastructure assets. What I'm trying to say, that as Urmas highlighted earlier, standards are extremely important and are one of our biggest allies alongside technology in this BIM GIS integration. But things become harder to manage when there is not a common coding structure, if you'd like, in terms of this is how the elements of a bridge or the elements of a highways are going to be coded, are going to be managed at a national scale. If you like, classification systems such as Uniclass is a great way of augmenting these standards, and I'm sure that with Building Smart and OGC in the next months or years, we will see an awesome, if you'd like, evolution on standards for infrastructure. The second challenge in my mind is the cultural aspect of BIM and GIS, and there is lots of research which indicates that while the potential, is limitless, really, sky is the limit, essentially. The lack of awareness and understanding and realizing this potential is a factor that needs to be addressed. It's a factor that needs to be considered. And where we were 2 years ago versus where we are right now, and seeing, like partners such as Esri and Autodesk pushing the boundaries from a technology aspect. We have organizations pushing the boundaries from an information management aspect. There is this piece of helping, empowering, the people that are actually going to use these systems, to use these tools, to use these technologies, these processes that we will be creating, to create the trust that what they are seeing is the latest information at the right time, is accurate, it's being updated properly, the system is fit for purpose, essentially, and so on and so forth. And bringing them together in this journey is something, like we need to do together. And, I always like to make the association of BIM GIS is not just the integration of data, it's also the integration of disciplines, if you'd like, with all these different stakeholders in the project.
We're big proponents. I personally am, Esri, as a company is, and individuals across the company are involved in the likes of IFC through Building Smart and OGC's efforts as well. Pat, you've been involved on some of that recently, on some of the indoors and FM related things. Is there, maybe with just a few minutes left here, start closing out. What do you think, with the effort of standards organizations really coming into their own in AEC? IFC has been around for 20 years. OGC has been around for longer than that. What do you see, Pat, right now? Is there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just real quickly, recent experience working with Building Smart International, on FM, an FM guide, as it were. My thinking on that is that, I mean, this, standards seem to have matured. I mentioned the 19650 earlier. I was surprised. What I learned there is that this tracks my experience, that if you really look at that document, what it means is that, as a vendor, right, delivering a solution, you need to meet the customer where they are, right? You have to meet their business requirements. So the asset information model that you construct contains structured facilities information to meet their business purpose, but it also meets their technology maturity level,
Yep.
right? Now, we always want them to go higher to the next level of maturity, but they can't always be there. But the point is that we're allowing for the collection and management, curation of structured facilities information. And when they're ready to take the leap, they can take the leap. So that's the one big thing that I've noticed that's changed since I was involved in Building Smart, like in 2007, right?
Interesting. We've got to kind of wrap up here. One thing that has come out across, all six of you, I think, in one way or another, is this idea of kind of existing conditions, meeting the client where they are, legacy data, comparing what was planned versus what's actually being executed. This bringing together of the existing and what you hope for. GIS and BIM together can hopefully deliver on that. I probably could have spoken with each of you on this topic for an hour or two, and I look forward to being able to do that in person sometime soon. We've got our Esri events and Autodesk events, AU and UC, coming up this summer, so hopefully we'll meet up there or other places. This has been a great panel. I appreciate your input, and again, wish we had more time. So Titus, I'll let you take it over from here. I think we're at the end of our time.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everyone.
Titus, you're live. Nope, you're muted.
Am I audible now?
There we go. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Extremely exciting session. Great insights from all the speakers. So we'll be moving on to the next session. It's named Sustainable Project Delivery with GeoBIM, and we have a good set of speakers for this session as well. I'll start introducing the speakers one by one. So we have Tal Friedman from Volstruct, the CEO of Volstruct. Hi, Tal, are you there? Okay, Stephen. Hi, Stephen.
How you doing? So a quick introduction of me, Stephen Santavasi. I'm a senior product manager at Esri in the AEC and smart asset space. I come out of a lot of years of government, AEC, utility experience in establishing geospatial solutions on a lot of the mega projects in North America. Glad to be a part of the panel.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen, for joining. Next, we have Professor Dr. Henk Scholten. Hi, Tal. Tal is here.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Professor Henk.
Hi,
Great to meet you again.
I'm hearing a couple of parallel things.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tal. Actually, I already introduced Henk, so we'll just go forward with Professor Henk, and then you can join. I hope that's okay. Hi, Tal.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Henk Scholten. I'm director at GIS, a company I started 37 years ago. Next to that, I'm a professor in spatial informatics at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. And especially for this session, I'm proud that I got 10 years ago from Jack a lifetime achievement. And as you see, that was too early. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Next, we have Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Bertolini. I'm at Autodesk. I'm the Director of Thought Leadership Strategy and Programs there, and I come from a construction background. So I worked in construction and engineering for about 10 years before joining Autodesk. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Vanessa. Next, we have Tal Friedman, CEO of Volstruct.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. I am the CEO of Volstruct, an architect by training, also an engineer in computational construction. I work in the field of digital design to manufacturing, what we call construction 4.0, and project delivery from design all the way to final fabrication and on-site, all of that in one platform. Extremely glad to be here. Was introduced to the whole GIS topic actually by Mark Goldman, and now really trying to see how that all comes together in a beautiful way, going from the macro to the micro. So extremely glad to be here and share my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much for joining, Tal. And the final speaker, Paramjeet.
Hi, Roy.
Hi,
thanks a lot.
Hi.
It's nice to meet everybody. Hi, I'm Paramjeet. I'm the solution specialist at Visaline. We're a software company for construction management. I'm an architect, and I've done my construction management, and now I support clients across the globe on the implementation of our software. My expertise is in lean construction and BIM integration, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining, and great to see you again. Okay, so we will be starting with the session. So my first question is for Professor Henk. I would like you to at first, define, what you mean by sustainable project delivery in construction industry.
Yeah, what I like to explain is how we started by the discussion about the integration of GIS and BIM. And that was a question I got from Jack Dangermond. He said, Henk, my old professor, Carl Steinitz, is writing a book. Perhaps you can give him a hand. And that was really an interesting step, because Carl Steinitz was trying to set up an environment, what we now call geodesign, where he brought together a lot of people from different disciplines, but especially the discipline of design, data science, and geography. And of course, IT is playing an important role there. And the reason for doing this was to develop a better world. Let's put it in that way. And we have seen it before, because it was at the end of the 90s that Al Gore was talking about the digital earth. And at the moment that for sustainable development, you want to bring all the data together so that different disciplines can work with it, you immediately have that aspect of scale. It can be a region, it can be a country, it can be a building, it can be a piece of infrastructure. At the end, you want to have it together. So that's how we started to discuss the integration, from my perspective, of BIM and Geo. And then an important topic I want to address. In my opinion, the Geo world is much further in cooperation and collaboration because of the standardization. So the standards developed, also thanks to OGC, early 90s when we started together. The standards in the Geo world are very well developed. The standards in the BIM world are lacking behind. So the cooperation is important, because at the end we have to bring it together. And at the same moment we face the issue that we are not as mature when we are cooperating. But the most important word I want to use for this session is cooperation, and what's necessary for that cooperation. I hope that that's a start for our discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Tal, my question to you. How can construction workflows be structured to support social, economic, and environment objectives of construction projects? What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, one of the things that we don't take into account many times as architects is the whole field of manufacturing and the whole, impact of the building on not just the person using the building, but on the actual environment and on the people living next to the building. I think one of the most interesting things about this age is that we are kind of merging BIM, what's called building information modeling, together with GIS. And that's actually the topic, right, of our session, is really going from the macro to the micro and understanding, what it is that, in which context we're designing. So, rather than starting with a blank page and just, doing our architectural vision, we have to look, at the context of society, what kind of pollution is in there. And that's going to affect my building. If I know that I have a lot of pollution in the air, I probably want to reduce the air ventilation, right, to only points where I can have filtration. Basically, I think that this age, allows us to use data in a much smarter way to enhance our design. I also want to refer to what Professor Henk was talking about when we're talking about standardization. So we have BIM level 1, BIM level 2, BIM level 3. I think 99% of the market is somewhere between level 0 and 1 when we really compare it to the guidelines of where we should be. Because having something in a 3D world doesn't make it BIM, right? It just means that we have the same information that we had on the paper, which is geometry. We have it in the 3D space. And I think the more data we add on top of it, which is related to the manufacturing costs, the ESG, the LCA, things that really make the impact, the more data layers we can have coming from the manufacturing and from our urban context, the more holistic the design can be.
Thank you, Tal. That was really comprehensive. Vanessa, would you like to come in and share your bits on this?
Yeah, it's really interesting, a lot of what's been said so far. I mean, I think sustainable project delivery is a mindset even more than it is related to one specific tool. We see that we have to think about not just the specific workflows that we're responsible for in the particular disciplines that we're working on, but as our projects as a whole, right? The AEC industry is a first responder to a lot of the sustainability challenges that our communities are facing, from climate change to aging infrastructure. And by layering in a lot of the different, data views that we're able through like BIM and GIS, we can really have a more comprehensive approach to how we're looking at not just a particular project, but the life cycle of that project in general. So I think, what we're talking about today is really exciting in terms of, the tools and technology that can support those sustainability-driven goals that our projects have, so that we can build, more resilient spaces for our communities. So I really liked how Professor Hank talked about, he kind of started at the beginning, going all the way back even to, what Al Gore was saying, 20 years ago around, trying to have a more sustainable, approach to how we're thinking about the challenges we're facing.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Stephen, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, no, I think those are all actually fabulous points. I think at this point, the integration of BIM into project delivery inside of AEC and for asset owners it's an expectation. And I think, for this sustainability, I think it's imperative that it continues to develop. So, looking at this from the perspective that, every asset that we have, has this life cycle that it goes through. And throughout that life cycle, there's dozens and dozens of teams, depending on which phase that you're going through, the planning, the design, the construction, the operations and maintenance of it, that there's so many pieces, so many teams, so many deliverables that need to be managed throughout that. And the more insight that we can have through a single system, through the buzzword is digital twin, but to be able to create this interface that we can not only look at the location in 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D of the project or the asset that we're looking at, but to be able to take that information and serve it out to everybody who's on that team. So not only the technical GIS people or the technical, designers, but also the non-technical people who can gain value and insight from that same information. So to be able to go to a dashboard and be able to see, in 3D, here's my BIM model, here's my reality capture, to be able to say, okay, this is where the building should be. Our point cloud shows that we're in the right place. Okay, good. The same thing. How can we manage our safety compliance, our construction inspections, our environmental monitoring, all in the same environment? I think it's so important, and that what Vanessa said, that it's a mindset, that you come into this with an understanding ahead of time, sort of like your BIM execution plan. We need a sustainable project execution plan, so that as we're working through this, we know the 10 steps that we're going to take to bring all this data together. And then we can take that and use it as a template going forward for all of our projects to help reduce recost, rework, to help make it more sustainable, to help, lessen our carbon footprint and lessen our impact on the environment.
Right. Thank you, Stephen. Paramjit, would you like to add some bits and pieces to that?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the report itself, I mean, you mentioned that 80% projects, overshoot their primary budget. That in itself is such a painful but real fact, because that's a lot of resources spent to deliver that project then, and every single resource overspent is, well, not sustainable in any format. So it's not just the money that you're looking at, but it's the whole aspect that there's an absolute waste of resources, and that's basically where we need to sit and target where we're going wrong. Something else that sort of stood out was just this fact that this integrated GIS and BIM adoption is still so limited in the build phase. We were doing a research sort of study recently with a university, and there's this notion that obviously construction plays a very small role in the life cycle when it comes to sustainable outcomes. But if you look at the expanse of the construction that's happening globally, that's still a huge number. That's still significant. It's not just you focus on design or operations. So there's discussions that are being opened, which is exactly why we're here, and that's wonderful to see. Tal spoke about data, which was so important because that's where we're sitting in the heart of what we deliver, at least to construction clients. And data has become extremely important to basically take the right decisions at the right time. Vanessa mentioned it's about the mindset. Everybody sort of covered the whole idea that you're working with data, but you need to collaborate and you need to work with teams. And you're just trying to basically streamline your project delivery. So in order to get better results, and so that we're basically building a lot better. And I think at its core is so important to address today. You can't just build and not have an impact on so many other lives globally. So I think that's really important.
Right. Thank you, Paramjit. Tal, so the next question is for you. What do you think is the role of digitalization in project management, when it especially aiming at sustainable outputs?
Sorry, I didn't get that one. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I'm asking, what is the role that digitalization is playing in terms of project management when it is aimed at sustainable outputs specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's that kind of magic number of 40% of the world's CO2 emissions. I see that kind of becoming the new buzzword. And I think that it's much more than that. I would say, firstly, the golden rule is it's not how we plan, it's what we build, right? We can say anything we want about how great of planners we are and how much data we have accumulated, but there's the proving ground, right? What have we built in the end? And I always like to use these types of platforms to talk about that kind of proving background, that in the end it's about us thinking how to rebuild. So the golden rule is that the way we build right now to begin with is a little bit crooked, right? It doesn't really matter what data you accumulate. If you're going to build a concrete building using aluminum windows and using the types of mechanisms that we have today, you're in a loop. We have to really rethink the whole process in terms of where we source our materials, how we manufacture, right? If I always like to give this example, if you look at a car 100 years ago, it was 10 times more expensive than it is now to buy. So people could afford an apartment, but they couldn't afford a car. And look what happened in 100 years. So it happened in construction, in clothing, in food. It happened in all the other fields besides construction. The other way of looking at it is to say that it just became 10 times more expensive, right? If everything went down and we stayed in place, it means that we actually became 10 times more expensive. And so to answer your question, I think we need to really think about how to deliver a project using the new technologies that we have, which is robotics, which is smart materials, being more brave than just talking about data, which is, of course, the beginning point, but bringing that actually down and creating new manufacturing methods and rethinking how we build a building because in the end, if we BIMitized and GISed everything, but have the exact same building as before, just planned, in digital tools, then we didn't achieve our goal.
Right. Thank you. That was really interesting. Vanessa, would you like to come in and share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Tao is making some really good points in terms of, what we build. I think the thing about digitalization and data is it kind of be a checkpoint for us, right? Like if we're using more tools where during the process that give us those data-backed insights so we can understand, hey, what is our performance? How are we doing? Are we choosing the right materials? Are we keeping our cost where it needs to be? Are we doing the analysis around the outcomes and how the project is going to impact the surrounding community? It can kind of give us a better understanding of the impact of our work on the environment. And that's really good because, without digitalization, you don't have that understanding. So data can be incredibly important, but we also have to think about project life cycles. It's not just, you're done, you turn it over and, you move on to the next project. Sustainability and the mindset that we need is also thinking about, what is happening, with operations? How is what we're doing continuing to perform? And that's, I think, where data can be really important because those insights around performance can then feed back into what we're doing on our next project. So we really have an opportunity to, rethink the way that we're approaching design, construction, to use digitalization to aid in that process and reimagine everything that we're doing. Like Tao said, it's not about, just recreating the same buildings over and over. It's about learning from what we're creating so that we can do better each time.
Right. Thank you, Vanessa. Stephen, would you like to comment on this?
Certainly, yeah. I think that, if we look at this from a singular project and we say, the ability to create this system and integrate BIM and GIS allows us better insight into the project. And we could say, this saved us 45 work days on the total project, or this saved us 20% on rework, or it saved our inspectors 2 hours a day that they could be home with their families. I think if we look at it on a singular project, we could see the impact. But then if we take that and we escalate that up and say, all the products in a nation, all the products in a world, and we say, the impact that it could make on the environment by reducing 45 days on 10,000 projects, it escalates it. And, I think that's where the larger impact comes in there.
Right. Thank you, Stephen. Hank, my next question is for you. And
do you allow me to react on the last question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think I have an excellent example of the last 5 years in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a delta. A delta means, like many other countries are in a delta, that you have a soft soil. That means that the construction can be quite a difficult issue to keep it, let's say, in a strong way. The answer on improving the construction is the knowledge about the subsurface. Because the knowledge of the subsurface will help us tremendously with the construction of the building. What happened in the Netherlands, because of the failures in construction, we came to the conclusion that we need to have better data and better knowledge of the geography of the subsurface. And next step, that we need to cooperate strongly between the construction environment, I mean the architects, but also the engineers, and the geographers, and let's call it the geologists, because of their knowledge. And we have now done 35 projects just in this small country on construction projects with added value, added knowledge of the subsurface. And for every project, we calculated the added value of bringing this knowledge together from the two perspectives. And I think this is an excellent example of sustainability, because otherwise we would have go on in doing exactly the same. And I'm not saying that we solved all the issues. I'm not saying that we all in BIM 3 level or whatsoever, absolutely not. And also the lack of knowledge regarding the subsurface is big, because it's not easy to understand the subsurface because you cannot see it. So you have to dig. But given the fact that we are aware of the fact that we have to bring, let's say, these disciplines together, the data together, the digitalization as an important instrument is, in my opinion, such a wonderful example of sustainable project management. Because if you not do this, then you know from the beginning that your project have all kinds of failures, which were happening in the last centuries.
Right. A little bit of a follow-up to that. So, we specifically when we talk about GeoBIM, how according to you, you can support with some examples, like how can GeoBIM enable data-driven operations and smart decision making when it comes to construction projects?
Yeah. I think I can stress the fact that decision making is not something simple. I mean, I have many students who wrote their thesis on decision-making instruments of tools. At the same moment, when I look back, then I know now that decision-making is a very complicated process. It's something else than an engineer. It's something else than a geographer. These people are, let's call it, policymakers. And they take decisions on different facts. Economy is an important one. Sustainability is growing. The construction component, but also accessibility, the energy transition. There are so many components who are important for a decision maker. And what I would say is the only thing we can do, I mean, talking from GIS and BIM, is providing them with as much quality information as possible. Not just, let's say, for the construction or for the environment, it has to be the integration. So I think it is important that we understand that for the next phase of our society, that we have to bring the disciplines together, that we have to bring the information together, and that it is not possible to take any decision just on one part. So the integration of all these components is quite a task.
Thank you. Paramjit, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, just following up from what Professor Hank said, it is that the sort of, if you take project management and you take the aspects of planning, execution, and control, it resides on decision making, like you mentioned, and for that you need information and you need data. If you're going to sit and wait, and it's not just the wait, but it's if you don't get accurate data, the decisions that you're taking at every step, the decisions that your team are taking at every step are wrong, and that's basically you playing catch up all the time. We've noticed that happened across projects. It's a big pain point, and people are prone to human error, and that's what always ends up being the case, and we can't deny it. The other aspect, before I jump onto the GeoBIM sort of answer question there, Roy, is another really important part that data has been playing or actually needs to play as of today. We are inching towards sustainability, and at least on forums like these, you do gather an audience who are looking at it from that perspective. But there is still a mass out there who's not sort of driven to the approach, or is too focused on delivering projects and not worrying about other things. It is really important for people who are trying to build a case to have data to prove the beneficial points, right? If there are long projects you're trying to make a difference, you need data to back your claim. And that's where this really plays an important role, information and data, because that's when you can actually convince people and convince other parties that this is needed. What you're doing right now is wasteful, and you cannot continue to build this way. So that really becomes an important point when dealing with information and data. Roy, in terms of your question on GeoBIM, we're working with infrastructure projects where it's really difficult to fathom not having geo sort of based information to help you plan accurately and to make sure you're not wasting resources there. There are a lot of times, especially on, let's say, highway projects, for example, or tunneling projects, you have, like, for example, specific teams coming down, specialized contractors coming down just for a specific job. And you need them at a certain location at a certain time. If you're wasting that and that's not timed properly, it really impacts the flow of work at these different locations. And that's the time when we've noticed and observed GeoBIM to play a really important role in sort of getting these decisions right.
Right. And thank you. Tal, would you like to join this?
Yes, sure. So, yeah, one of the things that we deal with in our, day-to-day work at Volstruct is AI and artificial intelligence, with, the real goal of creating better buildings or changing the building, where you'll be able to say that building could not have been built in another way. And that's basically a mindset that connects very much with what we're talking about. You see something here in the background, basically, that shows you kind of where we want to go. And the real idea of data, from all of the distinguished people that are speaking here, what I see firstly is that data has grown to an extent where we almost, I like to think of it as technology pulling the rug under our feet. We have so much data right now, the ability to accumulate all that data. And then we have that term called AI. And I'd like to actually remove the A from the AI, right? Because artificial intelligence, if it's artificial, then it's perhaps not that intelligent. And ask, how can we create real intelligence out of that data? So we have that data spread out, but telling right from wrong is actually the hardest part. I can give you all the data in the world, but somebody's going to have to analyze it. And I think that's really the next step of what we're talking about, and what companies like Esri and Autodesk, I know, are already working on, is the next step of helping me not just view the data and making me make the right decision, but actually turning those data sets into algorithms with grades, that can actually, give me not just data, but also insights and real world decision-making tools in that sense.
Right. Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, is that if we look at the integration of these systems, we look at, being able to integrate at different points throughout the process, so that we can tie what's taking place in the urban design, what's taking place in the actual design environment, and use that to make better decisions all the way across the asset life cycle. So as it goes into the construction phase, that data that was captured early on still has value to those people who move it forward. And the same thing when it gets into the operation side, and now we have the ability through this GeoBIM system to be able to then connect network sensors and IoT to be able to understand the history, the behavior, and be able to analyze what's taking place for that particular asset, and to be able to make better decisions on that, and to be able to have simple dashboards that we could look at, red, yellow, green. How is this performing, and what should we expect this to do going forward? So I think that, that to me, that's one of the most exciting parts about how technology is moving forward, is we have all these systems, and they're starting really to come together, and to be able to share that information, to be able to add value to anyone who needs to know about it.
Right. Thank you. Vanessa, my next question is for you. And
can I just say one thing about
Sure,
what's been
go
said
ahead.
already? I think, Tal and Stephen had some really good points. And, when we talk about things like data or digitalization, digital transformation, I think it's really important to remember that it's not just about the technology. It's not just about the process. It's about the people too. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to empower all of us, people that are using the technology, to make better decisions and have better insights. And it could be AI, it could be, GeoBIM, it could be a lot of different things that are coming together in order to do that. But it's always needs to be a people first approach. And I think that's one of the most important things to take away from this, because it's people that have the core value to, create better communities, more sustainable communities. We're the ones that are going to benefit, right? And we're the ones that need the insights to do that.
follow up. So another question that I wanted to ask you. So it's not always about saving time. Like completing a project faster and even being measurable. How do you feel like this integration of GIS and BIM is enhancing a quality of the project delivery? Because I believe that is also another very important aspect.
The quality of project delivery, is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about insights. I mean, that's why Autodesk and Esri have this partnership to begin with, right? It's all around creating technology that's going to allow, designers, contractors, engineers to understand the context through which they are designing and building, right? And that's what bringing together BIM and GIS does. It's not just like process based, right, with BIM, and this model-based approach, right? It's also understanding the context through which a project is being built in terms of the geography, the surrounding communities. And that's why I think the integration is so powerful.
Right. Professor Henk, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I'm happy with the answer we already got from Vanessa. I think you have to go to examples to show, let's say, the interest we have in having the right data and bringing it together. I'm hesitating, but the example of Corona has learned us a lot. And of course, it's clear that the approach we have are different and is related to culture. We have just seen how China is handling this and how cities are completely closed. We try to solve it in a different way in, let's say, in the Western countries. And what we try to do is to monitoring what's happening with a disease. And I know it's a little bit different than when you talk about construction, but at the same moment, there are all kinds of similarities. It's impossible to solve this kind of processes without cooperating. It's clear that decision-making is not that easy. And what we are doing at this moment is trying to understand what's happening in a building. But we cannot understand it when we do not know the environment. So what is happening in the United States is that we are setting up a new monitoring system for COVID by using wastewater and the analysis of wastewater. There we find the patterns. There we have the first, let's say, warnings of a possible breakout. And it's even a very cheap way of discovering this. But there we are really bringing together geography, because you cannot study this just in one building. At the same moment, you have to understand the sewage system in a hospital, because that's what we're doing at this moment in the United States. Or you have to understand the sewage system even in a city. So there you have all the different scales coming together. And still, decision-making is so complicated and so difficult. But it's so important. So there is the answer on the necessity of having all this knowledge, intelligence. Yes. And also, let's say, the uncertainty which comes together. And there we want to have the data of Geo and BIM in one environment, because otherwise we cannot integrate this knowledge. So I'm happy with the remark that at the end, it's all about people who have access to data, people who have knowledge and are willing to cooperate, because that's crucial.
Right. Thank you. Stephen, my next question is for you. And this is something I was meaning to ask you for a long time, because we had some other conversations as well. Mm-hmm. So do you think can GeoBIM actually become the single source of truth for sustainable project delivery in the future?
So that's a great question. The way that I think about this is, I think that GeoBIM is a process and an enablement. I don't think that it'll ever be the actual center source of truth. I think the farther that we get down this road, it's more about enabling and connecting multiple sources of truth. And I think that that's really important. So while we do incredible things as the source of truth in GIS, say for our mobile applications, our environmental applications, our safety inspections, it won't necessarily be the source of truth for the design environment like the Autodesk Construction Cloud may be. So
Yeah.
I think it's the important part is to be able to identify where those professionals and their work environments are and what their sources of truth are, and to be able to bring those together. And I think the bottom line is the collaboration of the data. So to be able to use GeoBIM to help enable that collaboration.
Right, Stephen. Paramjit, would you like to comment on this?
I think in terms of sort of, it'll be a nice thought for it to, be that way. But I think the most important part is GeoBIM has naturally brought out one of the most important aspects of BIM, which happens to be its sort of its placement in 3D, right? One of the basic forms, which is that you can visualize what it is to have a spatial knowledge of or spatial information related to your facility.
Paramjit, I think your screen just freezed. Are you able to hear us? Sorry, Tal, would you like to go and give me your answer for this? Yes.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I think it's this question of one platform does it all. I think there is one platform that will do it all, and that platform is called Open Data Exchange. That is there. They say there's one truth, and I think that goes again. That's also true in the BIM world. I think a platform in the end is value based. Right. And actually, I was talking to Mark yesterday, and he showed me a great example of how Autodesk Revit merges together with Esri together. And then I was thinking, well, now that can work in two ways. So am I a Revit user who needs data from Esri? Or am I an Esri user who needs data from the BIM model in Revit? And I think this is the most crucial part. And I have to say that I'm not so satisfied with what I see in the software world today, where people are creating closed formats, because I think in the long run, a format is only as good as the value that you create. Doing things in closed formats and creating a vault or a safe, I think, will be less effective than creating an open data exchange, and then letting the user, as we said, it's people-oriented and people-driven, decide if they want to get the BIM data on a GIS platform or the other way around. Just to give a really nice example of something that I heard yesterday, because there was also a question about prefab and stuff like that. So I'll give you a story of how everything merges together. There was a BIM project that was actually designed for prefabrication, where all of the sourcing was also done as a part of that. And everything looked perfect, right? They had the person giving doing the fabrication, bring it onto site. And then at some point they figured out that the regulations in one of the states don't allow driving with such a huge load as the prefabricated elements, right? So they finished designing all the prefab elements, and then they realized that actually the path that they took and how they calculated did not make sense. So they had to bypass a whole state, which made everything not cost efficient. And this is something that they, did not calculate, although they thought they have because they had the map. But just another layer of data on top of that, which would be the driving regulations, would have turned the project from a failure to a very profitable one. So I found that really exciting, to see the more layers of data we can, enhance in a project, and the less we limit it and say the only source or one platform will be the user-centric one. And I think this is the way to go from here and forward.
Right. Thank you. I think we are almost at the end of the session. So a final question. It's an open-ended question for all the speakers. So how do you think, GeoBIM or any similar digital platforms will be supporting, newer innovations in terms of sustainability, which we were not able to, like the industry was not able to achieve with the traditional methods. Professor Henk, you'd like to go first?
No, I think your question is a difficult one because you can find so many answers on that. I would say in general, it's clear that bringing data together and bringing people together helps us in finding answers to difficult questions. I have a wonderful example at this moment, because at this moment Schiphol Airport, a famous airport, is having huge problems because they cannot handle the crowd. Yeah. So that means that what never happened before in the Netherlands, that we have queues of more than 3 hours before they can enter the airport. There are two aspects on this difficult question. There are too many flights, there are too many people, and there is something wrong with the, let's say, the construction of the airport. But it's impossible to come with answers just from a construction perspective, because that's what they have tried to do in the last couple of months. They changed the airport more or less completely in the hope that crowd management would be easier. At the same moment, it completely changed the structure of our society, because half a year ago we had COVID, so nobody was flying. At this moment, everybody is flying, and in one way or another, it seems that Schiphol Airport is a very attractive hub. So there are much more flights. So it was impossible. It's still impossible for architects to find a solution. I think at the end, we have to do it together by having less planes flying to Schiphol Airport and less people who want to have these cheap flights to the Mediterranean. So it's not possible that GeoBIM answers all questions, but at the same moment, they are heavily related. So I'm happy with the integration.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Anyone else from the speakers would like to comment?
I'll jump in with just two quick thoughts. One is that I think it comes down to integration. The more integration there is, the more insight you can have, and that's for me, that's the bottom line, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Integration and trusting each other.
Right.
It's what you said at the very beginning. It's collaboration, right? It's bringing together more of the tools that we have at our fingertips to make better decisions. And I agree, there's not one single tool that's going to help do that, but the more that we have that can give us that visibility, the better off we all are.
Right. Tal, Paranjit, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to follow off what Stephen said. I mean, it is the integration that matters and what's going to count. And when BIM sits at the center of it, at least in terms of product being sort of the core, which can give you information, becomes the common language from, let's say, the client's requirement to the design to what we construct and what it goes into facilities management at the end, because it becomes the center and sort of the whole sort of project's world revolves around that. The more the product populates with information, the more insights we will be able to get down the line. So as far as the integration revolves, just like GeoBIM, for example, as far as the integration revolves around product at the center, and the smarter, or at least in terms of information, the more knowledgeable the product gets, we can get better insights to take better decisions, right? So that is something that we want to move towards. It's a long vision, and we're constantly working towards it, but it is to make product a lot more smarter for better information.
Right. Thank you, Paranjit.
Yeah. Just a last word from me, since I'm also the last one. Then I'll wrap it up. And thank you, of course, for hosting all of us. So for me, as an architect, working in the architecture realm, it's been really exciting to learn about the possibilities of GIS and taking a macro look for a second, because that's something that architects don't do. They do it in infrastructure, they do it in engineering, but I think when it comes down to a people-centric approach, we need to have a wider view. I mean, that's what it's all about. So firstly, it's very exciting to get involved in this. And one thing I'd like to take away from here is that besides the data that, of course, we're having more and more of, I'd really, like to see the future of this as what kind of data we need and have kind of, the artificial intelligence part come in helping us choose the right data. Because the more data there is, and I see this, because I'm in so many different fields, the data is just overwhelming us, right? And I think this will be the next level of software, is helping us locate, the right data from all these different sources. So thank you very much for hosting us, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. It was really great talking to you guys, and I really hope that we can take this conversation forward. In terms of a new webinar or forthcoming webinars, or maybe in person in one of our next forthcoming events. Thank you so much again, and good evening.
Thanks, Roy.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thanks for having
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
So we will be taking a short couple of minutes break, and we'll be back with the penultimate session, which is on a discussion on the GeoBIM maturity model with Mark, Jason, and George. Hello all, and welcome everyone to the session on discussion on GeoBIM maturity model. We have with us Mark, George, and Jason. So I would like you guys to come to the screen. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Titus.
Hi, George.
Hello, Titus.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. It's been a...
And hi, Mark.
Hello.
Yeah, so we got the final panel here. So to start off, I'll give a little bit of context. So Geospatial World basically came up with this concept of the GeoBIM maturity model in 2020 in one of our first in one of our GeoBIM AC market reports, and from there the main focus of that maturity model was technologies. And from that, we kind of moved into a second version, a second iteration of that, which basically in that we kind of replaced the technologies with the processes. I think all of the panelists have seen both of these maturity models. So I just kickstart the session with the first question. And as I was saying, the first version was based on the technologies, wherein the second version was more introducing the different processes and workflows. So do you think, is there any way to combine these two, or do you think is it a bad idea, or it will just complicate things?
I think I might go first. I think,
Jason.
honestly, it's workflows, it's technologies, but really what it's driving is outcomes. What are people trying to do? Are they trying to do better automation with their grading equipment, for example, or are they trying to collect, real world information around existing conditions with different types of tools? Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? And that's where the processes are. But I think it's really about outcomes, and that almost flips the paradigm of, are you, mature, or where do you sit, amateur, proficient, whatever. It's more about what's the right tool for the job to drive the outcomes. And so it's a little bit of a mindset shift from my perspective.
Right. So you're saying it should be a little bit more project specific?
Not necessarily project specific. I mean, we're looking at real world built assets and all the different life cycles of that. It should be more about what's the outcome each stakeholder is trying to get to with their expertise or their goals, or what's the job they're trying to do, quite frankly.
Right. George, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Titus. Very much echo what Jason just said. During the project, and during a project, the construction project, the delivery from project, from inception to handover, to maintenance, to decommission eventually, there are so many different stakeholders involved, and they change so often that it's very hard, let's say, to have one ring to rule them all, if you'd like. So the solutions and the GeoBIM maturity model, where I would see it going forward, is to start focusing or providing this extra level of detail in order to start developing, specific applications. We already see here, for example, we have the breakdown to the technical life cycle, which is great, and then we see a little bit more of detail in terms of certain, key processes that are happening with this stage. The next step is actually to start breaking down even more, because then we start understanding that different projects have different requirements, and different sectors, buildings from infrastructure assets and objects, have different requirements, and asset managers in one world do not necessarily talk with the construction managers in another world, and the construction managers are also not engaging necessarily with the planners that have originally designed the project. So what I would think is a potential addition to what we see here is, same way we have broken down the technical life cycle into these 4 stages, for example, to break down the information life cycle, which is relevant to each stage, to give this extra level of detail to start building focused applications.
Right. Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, Titus, we talked about this a year or two ago on a GeoBIM webinar, and it's my first view of this. I think you had just released it not too long before, and it was at a point when I was researching digital twins. We were just starting to talk about it within Esri and looking at various ways that the digital twin conversation was being framed, were around maturity models, typically of 0 to 5 or 1 to 5. And it just had me thinking about the need for these types of models and frameworks, and whether we needed yet another one, whether we need any of them. And I think they're very valuable. I think they serve a lot of purpose so that we can have conversations like this, so that we can have drop in at an AEC firm who is trying to understand what all these digital transformations mean to them, and spell things out in a way that is a framework, that is a way that you can walk into a room and say, we're going to talk about these phases of construction, and get feedback that, well, we really only worry about design over here, Mark. Okay, well, let's talk about just the aspect of this maturity model related to your work, Mary, and explore these different components of this model as it pertains to GIS and BIM. So I think there's value in this. I think there's a lot of value. I think that my feedback from last year, you sent me a link to that and I listened to it yesterday, still holds true, that there are perhaps other perspectives, other dimensions to this that we want to explore. This right now is a nice level where, your y-axis is your level of maturity and your x-axis is this goal towards being efficient and productive, and with the intent that the further you get away from 0, 0, you are more productive, more collaborative, you're more mature. So I think that this serves value, but I do think that there's another factor to it that might be, like George was just saying, the information life cycles that pertain to you. They may not be straight paths. They might be across the some of these rings. So I think that it's something that I haven't had the occasion, quite honestly, to use it in any kind of engagement. But it reminds me of ways that in the past, when I've been in business development roles and consulting roles, just to put something up on screen to identify where your client, where your customer, who reaching out to try to extract information from, it serves as a starting point to understand where someone is, what they're concerned with in this world of GIS and BIM and LiDAR and reality capture and so much going on. We have a slide that we show, and we refer to it as our buzzword bingo. And it's all that's going on in the industry. And I've used it as a means of just understanding what people want to talk about on a certain day, and using a Menti poll, because so much is taking place in this industry. And we do need to guide people towards the problems that they're trying to solve. That's our role as evangelists and consultants and problem solvers and engineers here.
Right, Mark. So basically, when we were working on this GIS BIM integration report, and we were studying and analyzing the different case studies of different construction projects throughout the globe, we kind of, and this I believe I have already talked in my short presentation as well, that we see that the penetration of technologies are more towards the first two stages, that is the plan and the design. However, towards the construction and operations and maintenance, the adoption of these technologies are not as much as this first two phases. So what do you think? Where are things going wrong, and what should we do to increase the adoption over the next two stages as well?
I mean, I'll speak, and I hope George chimes in too, because he's got the construction background. Yeah. Mobile is still relatively new. I mean, we talk about BIM, we talk about GIS. Those technologies have been around for almost 20 years plus. And I mean, GIS has been around longer than that. But the first iPhone isn't all that old when you put it in a relative scale. What is it, 12, 13 years old? Construction, we always talk about manufacturing for construction. Well, every construction project is like setting up a brand new manufacturing facility every time. Doesn't matter how big or how small, having the right mobile tools and having, cloud and things like that. And we're still as vendors, a maturity model around cloud and having the solutions that work for those individuals. And, to add to the complication, you have a very big spread in the level of maturity of users. When you talk about planning and design execution, you've got highly skilled people who largely have gone to universities. They've been using technology for large parts of their career. Well, construction's a very diverse workforce. We have to democratize technology to really drive it. So there's a lot of complications, but we're coming a long ways, and we've got even further to go.
Yeah, Jason made a few really interesting points here, Titus, and I couldn't agree more. So the construction industry typically, is when the project comes to life, right? It's when things become real. We thought about the project, we planned for it, we designed it. Now, okay, it's time to build it. And when this time comes in, it's extremely important for people to be able to trust all the digital solutions and tools that we put in front of them to help them do their job more efficiently and more effectively. So we keep talking about digital transformation, and lots of the times digital transformation is a transition from PDFs to 2D or 3D or ND. It doesn't really matter. But it's not just that. In my opinion, the digital transformation is also noted, and it's even more important at the people level. Essentially, they are the people who are using this technology. to transform, to change the way we're working. And that's not very easy. That's not very easy. And you need to have the right tools in place, the right processes in place to be able to enable that. That's extremely important. And the second aspect is the organization strategy that is taking that an organization is taking around digital, right? And this typically needs to come from top. In Skanska, for example, we have one of our dedicated milestones for the next 2 years is our digital by default approach and mentality. So this enables people to work a bit differently, to essentially embrace the digital revolution and the technology. And this puts us in a really good position to work with Autodesk, to work with Esri, to start building these tools that will help them build the project, as we can see here, more efficiently and more productively. And one of the things that I'd just like to leave here perhaps for further consideration is how do we start what I would see as an extra step in the GeoBIM maturity model is how do we start measuring some of these fields that we see in front of our screen.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, George. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, on that bubble diagram you showed at the beginning, there was no surprise from anyone on the planning early phases where you're gathering information of so many types and need to make early decisions that you know will impact the rest of the project, that GIS and BIM together, or at least GIS and other traditional AEC content were being brought together. Same thing in design. The context is so critical to make design decisions. GIS brings context. You can't undersell the importance of that, of not starting just with a blank screen, but having all of the context of the layers, visual, demographic data, traffic flow, weather that might impact designing a building, a road, what have you. Construction, the fact that there was less usage and response, all these things that Jason and George have said. It's a different workforce. It's a different expectation. There's a tangibility to the work process of construction that doesn't occur perhaps prior. So as we're evolving, growing, maturing our own solutions around mobile work, I think we're just going to see more and more GIS and BIM brought together, because BIM, certainly VDC, the models have been used in construction. It was at least a decade ago that several of us were proclaiming that it was 2010, I think, was the year of BIM for construction. So that matured. And I think the GIS and the importance of location, scanning, all the reality capture, taking forms-based data, forms-based entry into apps instead of paper-based processes is just going to drop off as an accepted workflow, I think, over the next year or two, probably, as we've all gotten used to digital. And as Jason was saying, it's only been 10 years or so, 12 years that we've had any kind of power in our hand like we have today and expect. So, we're in a hockey stick kind of adoption of technology and growth, like the pace, the expectation, COVID implications, changes of the workforce from baby boomers to millennials is certainly changing the expectation of technology. So I think we're going to see construction pick up. And I was kind of surprised in the report, and I think it was perhaps a reflection of who we reached out to and the data that we collected, that asset management and operations were not more widely used, because we know that water districts, utilities, entire cities are using these tools together. Maybe it's just still earlier, and what I'm seeing is the tip of the spear, and there's a lot more to come. But I expected to see the asset management side of things be a little bit larger bubble and more value recognized. It could also be that the firms who we connected to get this data back, the research, was more on the plan, design, and build side of things, because not all firms do continue into operations.
Right. Thank you for those suggestions, actually. And in fact, we are planning to come up with the next version, the next iteration, a better way of representing this GeoBIM maturity model. So basically, I would actually ask. So my next question is basically asking for suggestions from your side? Like, how what are the different other, I think you already touched about this on the first question, but what do you think are the other factors and parameters that we may, take into consideration when we walk towards the next version?
I really like what George said as far as information flows. I mean, these right now are work processes that take place. Schematic design, results in calculating and analyzing entities that, helps with project programming, et cetera. And these are workflows. But what is the actual information? What is the, I think it's John Turner from GAFCON refers to it as the digital thread. Connect some of these spots and look for opportunities to maybe define standards, define some best practices. Maybe there's examples where, we know that the newest extensions of IFC and BCF work really well here, or some of the work that the Construction Progress Coalition is doing might assist some of the workflows. That would be interesting just to see where the work that Esri's and Autodesk and others product managers are worried about solving problems. Where is the digital, connection between some of these? That's one thought.
Right.
I'd like to add on what Mark said. So, as I see our screen right now, what I can see from this diagram is, we are sort of trying to answer the when. We need to do all these things. We are sort of trying to answer the what, which is project delivery, project monitoring, predictive maintenance. The next logical step for me is the how we're going to do it. And the how is always a tricky question, right? Because you can't go into too much detail. However, what you can do is you can identify the key stakeholders you need in place to make this how come into life, whether this is organizations that generate standards, right, such as Building Smart and OGC, whether it is companies that build technology, such as Esri and Autodesk, whether there are companies that are part of this life cycle and the build projects, such as Skanska. It's identifying these key stakeholders in order to properly extract the expectations or the requirements, if you'd like, right? Bring key customers or key organizations around transportation, infrastructure, real estate, or building, and so on and so forth. It can become obviously quite a gargantuan task, but this is essentially how you can start moving into, if you'd like, global, to say, if that's the ambition, global GOB maturity model, which is always very, very challenging, but the value is there. And I think the work you've already done and the experience we already have demonstrates this value.
I would even I love what George said about the what and the where, and take it one step further. It's that information thread starts to then also bring into the why. Why are we needing this information, and what is that information, and where does it need to go to? And bringing back the previous session on sustainability, like, that's another version of the why that becomes more and more important as we learn more. It's not just, hey, I need to build a building to have office space for people to work. I want to build a building or a road that is the most, energy efficient, is most carbon responsible. Like, that drives to the whys of how we can start to do more human-centered design and construction and operations, and really having that information thread connecting to the why would really be, I think it'd be important conversations to be having and really changing that mindset.
Yeah, as I'm looking at this, each one of these pie-shaped pieces, if each of them had those factors called out, a little bit of discussion of why is schematic design as it pertains to GIS and BIM important, and what does it mean, and what comes out of the effort of using the tools together, and how does it impact the next stage? Same thing for each of these squares. That might be an interesting thing to develop into some kind of a document, something to bring some people together and just discuss all of these boxes from a GIS and BIM perspective. What is the what, the why, the how, and such. That might lead to those digital threads.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think we are almost done with the session. One last question, and particularly towards Mark and Jason. And so basically, as we were discussing in the previous question, that the last two stages, there's not that much of penetration. So any sneak peek into what you guys are planning in the future, for the future of like a little bit of more penetration of the AEC industry into these two phases?
I'll just maybe start there and start by going backwards. We started out the Esri Autodesk relationship with, like I mentioned earlier, connecting each other's desktops to each other's clouds, allowing engineers and designers and those in those early phases to work together. In the last year, we've released on the Esri side ArcGIS GeoBIM, which connects our clouds. And it tends to be something that owners, operators, those with a long-term lifespan, those who want a way of accessing their facility information through a visual mechanism, a spatial orientation. ArcGIS GeoBIM seems to really be resonating there, and the AEC firms who enable that on behalf of owners. So I think we're going to see GIS and BIM coming together and recognized as greater value and easier to bring together than it simply was a year or two before when we started this research effort. So it'll be interesting to see, once we've brought those together, once we've highlighted the ability to do these kinds of things on the operations and maintenance side, and as digital twin becomes a vernacular within so many of the industries around AEC, I think that GIS and BIM are just a logical connection point to solve those problems.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, what is coming, I guess, is the sneak preview. What we're going to be continuing to work on jointly, between Esri and Autodesk, is maturing the interoperability of those connection points. We're sharing data and information now on our desktop solutions and our cloud solutions, but, even as each of our tools continue to develop and grow and expand, we're creating and consuming new types of data or more complex data. We're going to continue to mature the connections between those two solutions, whether that's really complex curvatures or things like that. That's where the future is heading, and it's all about the increase of that interoperability.
Right. Thank you, Jason. And one last quick question to George. Since you are from the construction industry itself, any drawbacks of GIS and BIM integration that you have here in your mind?
Drawbacks?
Yeah.
I cannot even think one. The only drawback is, why are we're not doing this 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
Yeah.
But of course.
They say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And the second best time is to do it right now. So
yeah, I think this applies nicely to that. My only comment, Titas, is technology is fantastic, and technologies are ally, but it needs to be built on robust processes and people. We are consumers of this technology, and to maximize it and deliver efficiency and work more productively, we need to be able to address certain challenges, interoperability and cultural efficiently, successfully. So, it's key to have a connected, if you'd like, ecosystem.
Right. Thank you, George. Thank you, Mark and Jason, as well. It was really nice talking to you in this session. So this brings to the end of this session, as well as the event. I really hope that I enjoyed this this last 3 hours of this event really a lot, and I really believe all the audience that joined us have really enjoyed this. There was some great insights, and I really hope to meet you guys soon in person in one of our forthcoming events, and also even for the audience as well. I hope you guys join us for the next time. So thank you. I believe we can end the session right here. So bye, Mark. Bye, Jason.
Thank you, I want to thank Geospatial World. You guys do a brilliant job pulling together AEC, GIS experts from around the globe for these kinds of opportunities. So thank you.
And thank you for all the support as well.
Thank you very much for the invite. Thank you, Jason, Mark, and Titus.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.